So you got it apart, and you're going to have to replace the caliper and the rotor, maybe the shock like I had to in this instance. And maybe, just maybe, you want it to look a little bit nicer than it has for the last few times you've had to go through this and had to take it apart. So if you might do what I did. Ran out to Lowe's, picked up some Rust-Oleum paint, a can of high temperature red paint, and went to work. So as you can see here, I got the Rust-Oleum primer, and I'm just brushing it on. I mean, because honestly, one of the neat things about using a brush is that it gets into all the little nooks and crannies of that aluminum. I think it's cast aluminum. Or maybe it's just painted steel. I don't know. I don't know what these things are made of. But the primer seemed to work really good with a brush, and honestly, it's not like you're painting a car finish, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be on there. And what I did is I wound up putting on 2 coats of this primer to the whole bracket and the caliper. Now, given the amount of work it takes to tear these things apart, I had plenty of time to let the coats dry, flip them over, paint them again, flip them over, paint them again. You know, you get the idea. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So, you know, in getting the rotor off and getting this hub assembly off, that's what I'm going to call it, they take a little bit of tapping. Now, granted, you don't have to pull out the locking hub, so that was fine. But what I did do in getting this done, I put 2 coats of primer on both sets, and as you can see, I'm getting detailed in here. And what I wound up doing is I wound up standing it up on the bolts after I got it rotated and whatnot, so I could do the final touches. Because what's really nice about the bolts is they're tapered, right? So there's no getting paint into the threads if you're a little careful. And sitting on the bolt tips, even as I got paint on the cardboard, it didn't become a problem, luckily. So once I got 2 coats on, then it was time to, in between other things, start spray painting. And this is where I use the high temperature red paint. That's the engine paint. Yeah, I don't know how many thousands of degrees it's supposedly good for. But I did notice that if I had just waited a little bit longer, it would have dried a little more. It would have been easier to handle. I had to do a little touch up while it was on the truck, but it wasn't a big deal. So while I was waiting for the first coat of paint to dry, I went and took off the other hub assembly. Not the hub assembly, you know what I'm talking about here. You can see I'm painting it. The first coat of primer on this, and it was working out pretty good. I was actually kind of impressed by the way it covered the metal and stops it from rusting. Now, when I go to pound these bolts out, I'm sure the paint isn't going to stop them, but it does keep it from rusting, and it does look nice. Now, I'm the kind of guy, I like to paint parts as they come off, and I got to put them back on anyway, and what you're seeing here, I didn't paint the rotor, it came that way. And what's around the area here, it kind of looks like I overpainted. It's not. What that is it's anti-seize, so that when I got to take this hub assembly off again in the future, because let's face it, I'm going to keep the truck for a long time, but at least next time it'll come off without a lot of pounding. Now, my wife took a picture of me working on the truck, and I guess it's good because even though I don't like to be the star on my own videos, it's nice to remember that I did this. And here you have the finished product, the new shock, the new brake lines, and everything. Something to note here is I didn't realize that the vacuum lines come when you order a set of brake lines for the caliper. That was kind of nice because one was rotted out. This is what it looks like from the outside. It's not very noticeable, but it is there. So that's kind of cool. But for anybody who ever is crawling around under the truck, this looks kind of impressive, I think. At least for me. You know, it's a 20-year-old truck, but as every day goes by, I keep doing something a little more, and it's going to look great when it's done. I've done so much to this truck all along with the high-pressure regulator and the Mishimoto stuff and whatnot. I actually got the nicest compliment I've gotten in a long time. I had the windshield replaced because it had a lot of stars in it, and I went to the process of getting the Super Duty windshield. And the guy who installed it thought it was kind of funny that I spent an extra $120 or so to get the Super Duty windshield. He says to me he was surprised until he opened the hood. And the nicest thing I think anybody's ever said about my truck was, he said, it really looks different under the hood. It looks like a sleeper, which was kind of cool. I wouldn't exactly call it that. I'm not sitting on an extra 500 horsepower. But I have, over the last 10 years, upgraded everything I could think of to get in there. And the last thing was the coolant filter, which was just done, along with a new wiring harness. So, yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm probably going to keep this truck until the wheels fall off, and then I'll rebuild it after that. So if you've made it this far and you're loving your Ford 6-liter, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. And if you're tearing it apart, paint it. It'll look great. It's yours. Take pride in it. Alright, that's all I got for now. Hope to see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.